Back to the functions of government that we were talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. Before we got off on this climate change thing.
Happy to, sir.
Anyway, uh, is protecting peaceful citizens against people that want to use force to take their money a proper function of the federal government? Should the government do that?
Protecting peaceful citizens against people who want to take their money.
Uh, Protecting peaceful citizens against people that want to use force to take their money. Either should the state governments or the federal government do that? Is that a important function?
I think, the functions of government involves taking the money, and they use coercion to do that.
Okay, so you think the government should do that?
In a socialist society, such as we have, it's necessary to run government programs and government functions. They have to use some method of coercion to try to get money from people.
So the government should not protect peaceful citizens against people that want to use force to take their money.
Well, you're asking a loaded question in the way you're asking.
Well, it's either yes or no. If
No,
you're
it's
saying
not. It's yes or no. If you're saying should
Why is
someone
it
be able
loaded?
to come up to your house with a gun and try to take your money, then surely
the government should protect you against that
against that.
individual
trying
robber.
to take your money, a robber, sure.
Right, okay,
And
but if
they're
a group
strong.
of people organize politically and they are able to get 51% of the votes to pass a law to take your money, then it's okay.
Well, there's civil disobedience, of course, but I think that if they have the force of law behind them, then they're going to be successful in trying to get your money, and that's just the nature of government.
Right, but I'm asking you if
It
you
could be
think
a
it's
lot
right.
with Bernie Sanders. It could be a very smaller amount under my plan.
Oh, okay, well, I'm happy to hear that because I think property rights should be respected.
Sure.
But so here's the question on redistribution of wealth, right? Should the government forcefully take money from some citizens through taxes in order to provide free goods and services for others? Is that a proper function of the federal government?
I think it has been doing that over the years. And
Yeah, I
think
agree.
that's- I
Well,
think that-
originally it didn't do that, right?
Yeah. Well,
There was
I
the
don't know.
founding
Initially, there was no
the
income tax.
right, and the government expenditures were very small, right?
Part of the complaint of Britain, was that they taxed, and so
Right,
we wanted to get rid
right.
of that.
And so when we established the government, the taxes were very low, and so, in fact,
they
it was
borrowed a lot of money that instead of taxing people, they'd rather borrow it, so they had debts that they had even back Theodore Roosevelt was president. So they eventually passed an income tax with an
right.
amendment, 16th Amendment.
Right.
So they have an income tax, and that's
Right.
how they
But
get money.
and previous to that, the courts had held that doing that, taking money from some citizens in order to give others money, or taxing,
Was not a good idea.
was a
Unconstitutional
deprivation of property without due process of law,
Unconstitutional.
and violated the Fifth Amendment, and so it was unconstitutional.
And they eventually,
Right?
had the 16th Amendment, but they
Right.
didn't
So-
feel like the taxing authority of the law was sufficient to have an income tax, so they passed it.
So that was a major change in the view of what the proper function of the government should be. Before, it was held to be unconstitutional and wrong, and then after the 16th Amendment, the court thought that it was now proper to do that.
True.
And they started with a very small income tax, 3% or something, and then they increased it to under Eisenhower,
was like
90.
50. It was like 90% or something.
Okay, so what do you think about that? Should 51% of the citizens have the right to expropriate as much as they want from the other 49%?
Well, I think that it depends on, what the law is as to whether or not it's a good tax or a bad tax. If it's something simply for purposes of redistribution of the wealth, then certainly it's not a fair tax, in my opinion. Is it something that's being used for purposes that are governmental purposes?
Proper governmental purposes. What are the proper governmental purposes? That's a good question.
Well, I would say, building highways, things that are needed in the public use, railways, infrastructure, things that we need. We see health care today as the biggest amount that we spend in the federal government, over $1 trillion a year in the federal government spent on health care. And, they've determined that's a tax, the Supreme Court has, and that's something that's in the best interest, I guess, of the people to keep them free of harm and take care of their general welfare. And so we spend a lot of money on Medicare, Medicaid, and Obamacare, and all the different forms of health care that we have for veterans and all of that. So it's an expensive proposition.
So you think that we should do all that, like foreign aid and farm subsidies and all of that's redistribution of wealth?
It is, and I don't
Medicaid.
agree with all of those. I wouldn't agree to
Well,
certain things that we
but
do.
you, in principle, you don't have a problem with the government redistributing its citizens' wealth.
Well, taxing in and of itself is a form of redistribution of the people's wealth. I mean,
Well, if they
so
tax you in order to provide an army to defend you, they're taxing you in order to provide a service for you, right?
right, but I mean, they're
But if they
redistributing
tax
wealth,
you in
they're
order to
taking-
give the money to your neighbor,
yeah,
that's redistribution of wealth.
yeah, and I don't agree with that.
Okay, candidate, I think we have had a good interview. I hope
Thank
it
you.
was intellectually interesting, and I want to wish you the best of luck, because independent candidates based on the two-party system that we have, winner take all, it's all very uphill.
It is, but you know, when you got a candidate like Donald Trump and a candidate like Hillary Clinton, as it appears we're going to have, you need to have some third-party candidate who provides integrity. 40 years of experience in the practice of law that I've had, helping middle-class and poor people do well and turning their lives around. Have a master's degree in divinity, a master's degree in Christian counseling. I'll be known probably as the mental health president, someone who can bring something to bear on helping people who are dealing with illnesses.
And we wish
so
you the
forth.
best of luck on all that.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
God
Bye.
bless.